Can't drive reasonable either, right?
Good evening and welcome to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from the gun store here in Las Vegas, Nevada. The show is called Fired Up. It's all about guns, politics related to that, and self-defense issues. We are coming to you on KSHP Radio 1400 AM, on live on YouTube at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. We're here every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. The radio is on Tuesday, 5 to 6. The shows on YouTube remain, and you can tune in those at any time. Tonight's guests are attorney Alan Butel and firearm instructor Lenny Davis. If we could, Alan, a little bit of your legal background for our new listeners.
A little bit. Been practicing law in Nevada since 1987. In that capacity, have prosecuted criminal cases, defended criminal cases, and I have a practice that involves a wide variety of civil law. I've been a gun enthusiast majority of my life, former Marine Corps, former highway patrolman in Kansas, and happy to be here again. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming in. And Mr. Davis, in case somebody hasn't heard of you that watches this show.
Yeah, I'm Lenny Davis, retired special agent, Department of Homeland Security. I've spent approximately 8 years being a trainer for the State Department in the Global Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program. And I am now the Director of Training Facilities for Textratics International here in Las Vegas.
We are going to start, as usual, with a couple of firearm cases, defensive cases. The media doesn't often run stories about people using guns for legitimate purposes, and they certainly run a lot of them for people using guns for illegitimate purposes. So we like to run a few of those every week. Some are good, some are bad shootings, some are just plain thoughtful. That I run them usually without names involved, so that you, the listeners, can look at the case and go, wow, what would I do if I was in that position? And a lot of them are good shootings that we're going to critique a little bit because they could have been made a little bit better if somebody thought it through before. Hard to think under stress, so don't blame the people involved for doing something dumb because you have very little time to think, obviously, in real life. However, with that being said, we'll start out with 2 or 3 of these cases. This is from the Tyler Morning Telegraph, also reported by BearingArms.com. This is in Tyler, Texas. This is kind of under They Never Learn. 2 people attempted to buy a dog via a social media. Were set up for a robbery by a group of 3 or more male subjects, at least one of whom was armed. The Tyler Police Department responded to a report of a robbery outside the Family Dollar store on 3505 Frankton Highway around 8 p.m. If you happen to be from Tyler, Texas, know where that is. The officers were met by 2 victims who said they had come to the store to purchase a dog after seeing an advertisement on social media. When they arrived, they were met by a single male who led them around the building to make the transaction. That we call a clue. Anyway, as they turned the corner, they were confronted by several other male subjects who yelled at them to get on the ground. The victims believed one of the subjects pointed a handgun at them, but could not be certain due to poor lighting conditions. One of the intended victims had a valid Texas handgun carry license, drew his weapon, pointed it at the suspects. The suspects quickly fled. The victims went inside the store to have employees call the police. When officers arrived, the suspects were gone. Police are still searching for them. Nice story. The gun wasn't fired. This didn't make the news anywhere except in Tyler, Texas, population apparently 35 or so. I don't know. That's a small town. Other than walking into a fairly obvious trap, if you're meeting someone, you got to watch out for social media. We've done a lot of stories about people getting robbed when they show up at the house or invite somebody to their house, and they have no idea who it is. And it's usually, as in this case, just after dark. Nobody can see very well. He held his fire when he wasn't sure if the bad guy had a gun. That's a little dicey. Certainly with 4 or 5 opponents, realistically, if the guy is making like he had a gun, even if he didn't see it, valid reason to fire in self-defense with 4 or 5?
I would be in fear of my life and probably start shooting.
Yeah, that's kind of why it's here, because you got a decision to make that you can't really make a good decision because you can't see. But if the guy's
I mean, the worst,
intimating he has a firearm,
the worst decision made here was the fact that, you know, number one, if you're going to meet somebody to buy something off of social media, you know, Craigslist, Backpage, whatever, you know, go meet somebody broad daylight in a very, you know, public place. Don't go around the corner into an alley with somebody. That's crazy.
that's a clue right
That's
there.
a- that's
when the
a
guy
huge
disappeared, say, meet me in the back of the store or behind the store. That's a clue, folks.
Yeah.
Well, I think the intended victim in this case is almost a textbook example of what should be done. He drew his firearm when he was confronted with a dangerous situation. He did not fire, and I think rightfully so, because there was no imminent, immediate threat of life against him at that point. One can assume a lot of things, but he did have his firearm drawn, and they fled. He absolutely had a right to draw the firearm. I think it's a very sound thinking that he didn't shoot it, and God bless America.
Had they
that-
decided to come forward
Oh,
after
yeah.
he pointed the gun,
Absolutely.
Right.
Then he could rightfully unload it.
But this is other than going around the back of the building with a guy, this is a perfect self-defense case.
Perfect.
Yeah. Point the gun,
Absolutely.
they run, and they usually do. That's about a 95% stat. So, want to remind everybody, we do offer free concealed carry permit classes every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You can find them on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. Another Texas case. This is KHOU in Houston, Texas. If you ever want to subscribe to a newspaper to find a lot of shootings, try KHOU in Houston, Texas. An armed robbery was thwarted by the intended victim Wednesday evening. Earlier in the evening, P.F. Chang's restaurant caught fire with some damage spreading from the wall to the roof. The fire was not related to the robbery, apparently an electrical fire. During the suppression of the fire, a Houston firefighter suffered minor injuries. Not long after firefighters left the scene, police were got a call back. A would-be robber was shot in a scuffle. Around 1 a.m. Thursday morning, the fire was late Friday night, it was Thursday morning, 1 a.m. A 17-year-old male approached the contractor who was hired to board up the restaurant. He got so close to his victim that the worker was able to grab the gun and attempt to wrestle it away from the guy. During the struggle, the would-be robber got shot in the groin. Police say he tried to run but was in a lot of pain, we can imagine. Got only a block or two through the parking lot. An officer responding to the incident saw the suspect, took him into custody. He was transported to Memorial Hermann Hospital. The contractor was able to leave. He was uninjured. Again, we have a legitimate concealed carry holder. Very quick thinking here. This is the dicey part tactically. You've got a gun. There is a guy pointing a gun at you. What do you do? Turning and running is a bad idea, normally. He's pointing a gun at you. Drawing on him, and we have another case, I think, tonight of somebody doing that, drawing while the bad guy's pointing a gun at him. This guy apparently made the smart move, what I'd consider the smart move, by trying to deflect the gun first so he doesn't get shot. If the guy is close enough that you can grab at the gun, first thing you want to do in a confrontation with a gun is not be the guy who gets shot. So he deflected the gun, managed to turn it around, and shot the guy. Is it reasonable for him to believe that his life was in danger?
Absolutely.
Because now here we can clearly see the gun.
Yeah.
And we know people are getting shot for cell phones or even less nowadays. So tactically sound, bad guy's hurt, good guy isn't. Deflecting is a good idea when they're that close.
Yeah, and another thing that, you know, I've taught law enforcement officers for years, especially guys when we were doing undercover work. I did a lot of that over the years. And I taught in our undercover academy is, you know, if a guy's got a gun on you, if you can't get him close enough to get it away or push it away to get yours, distract him. If a guy's trying to rob you, take your wallet out and drop it on the ground. What's he going to do? He's going to look down. When he looks down, that's when you need to be able to go. Take your keys. Give me your car keys. Okay, here's the keys, and drop them. Anything you can do to distract this guy. It's something you have to make a really conscious thought process about doing and training. It can't be just something, oh God, what did Lenny say? Oh yeah, give him my wallet. No, I meant to drop it. Damn it. Oh, give him the keys. No, I meant to do that. So yeah, it's something you have to put some time in, just like anything else that you do with firearms. You have to put some time into your tactics. This is where training comes in. Get some good training. Get some training from some people that are certified, real world firearms instructors and people who have been, as we say, downrange or have been, in the middle of it. Get some real training, and then get a good attorney. So when it's over with,
you'll need one.
Training first, attorney second.
Always the attorney. We're going to get into one guy that ran his mouth at a scene that should have known better. We have ladies only personal safety and shooting class twice a month. Next one available is Thursday, April 14th. You can sign up on our website, taught by noted firearms instructor Maggie Mordaunt, and she will be here. It's a wonderful class. If you are a woman thinking about getting a gun, lady instructor, so you can talk freely in the class about what you're worried about. This is NBC TV6. Now we're over to South Florida, where the rest of the shootings happen. Off-duty Miramar police officer shot a burglar who was trying to break into his home early Wednesday. The incident took place in the 6200 block of Gauntlet Hall Lane shortly after 6 a.m. There was a spokesman for the officer. He's with the Broward Police Benevolent Association, who's the union rep for these guys. The officer was awakened by the sound of breaking glass. With him in the home were his 2 children and his sister. He chose to confront the burglar outside the home. That's when the shooting took place. The 39-year-old officer told investigators he feared for his life, was forced to fire. Says that right in the manual. I was in fear of my life and forced to fire. The burglar was killed. No one else was injured. Police also reported an attempted burglary a few homes away a few minutes before the shooting. The first woman, the first victim, heard someone trying to open her screen door. He couldn't get it open, so he cut the screen, put his hand in, unlocked it. She said, at that point, I got up because I have a bright sensor light, turned it on. The burglar apparently then fled. There are also a couple of other burglaries that appear to be connected. The name of the suspect wasn't released. The official said they're investigating other burglaries. The officer has been with the Miramar Police Department since 2007. Police said it appears to be good self-defense, but the shooting remains under investigation. Normally, we would advise anybody if someone is trying to break into your house that you barricade yourself in the house somewhere where they can't find you immediately and call 911 and hope the officers arrive prior to the bad guy finding you. In this case, he determined it would be better to engage them outside. I would assume because his children, they were small children that are in the house and his sister's in the house. Reasonable thing to do, yes.
I'd actually have to see what happened before I could really say, yeah, it's reasonable. I mean, yeah, you've got your sister and your small kids in the house, but you still got to make them come through the door that, as we call it, the fatal funnel. That's why, caskets are rectangular, because doors are rectangular, and that works out very, very well. So I would have to look at this. This is the 4th or 5th wrong house bad guy burglary I've seen in the last
couple of weeks. They don't look up where the cops live.
Yeah, you pick the wrong house, and this is obviously what happens. It happened the same in Los Angeles and over in San Bernardino County, getting closer to home.
This one I pulled particularly because the officer was outside, he was armed, but the point of this is he doesn't work for this department. He's living outside his jurisdiction. So the officer's responding don't know him on site. This isn't like small town where there's 6 cops and we all know each other.
Right.
These are guys from a different department arriving. That's a little dicey. It's when you walk out of your house with a gun in your hand when the police are closing in because you called them and said there's a bad guy with a gun in front of my house. And when they get there, that turns out to be you.
Yeah, it's
that's a good reason not to leave the house. So cops can tell who's who.
and you know this guy's
Fortunately, apparently he was smart enough to drop the gun and raise his hands. I would think a guy that's been on the department that many years would know, which makes you wonder why he went outside in the first place.
Well, yeah, but you also have to look at that too. As you all know, we have that. They've done a study with police officers and their time on their time on service, and in the first 5 years, you do everything by the book and you do everything properly. And that 5 to 10 years, that's where you go, look, I know all this, and this is what's going to bite you in the rear end because you kind of forget that proper procedure because, well, I've been around a while and I know all this.
Yeah,
you don't need to tell me that. And here's that guy. He's right in that.
Yeah, that lit me right up when I saw the police are responding. He's out in front of his house with a gun. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
But it worked out. Anyway, questions or comments? We don't take them on the air anymore, but you can send me an email, bob@firedupmail.com. And it's on the little sign right there. And we will answer your questions or comments. You have a question for the attorney or for Mr. Davis, just send it to bob@firedupmail, and I will forward them to the people that you need to talk to. The Sun Sentinel, again, this is Boca Raton, Florida. A homeowner opened fire just after waking up to a burglar inside his home just after midnight. You know what? I'm going to skip this one for a minute because we're going to run out of time. I got a lot of cases tonight. Here we go. This is another kind of going after a cop. This is Fox News Dallas, Texas on the 17th. 2 armed robbers approached a man eating his dinner in the parking lot of a Whataburger at Inwood Road and Lemon Avenue at 1 in the morning. This is tables outside, not the guy's not sitting in the parking lot. Tables in front of the place. If you've been to Whataburger, they generally do that. The victim they chose turned out to be an off-duty but armed security officer. It did not say in the story whether the officer was wearing a uniform or not. So we don't know that. That would indicate the IQ level of the bad guys, but we don't know. Anyway, these 2 guys walk up and try to rob him. He drew his illegally carried firearm, shot one of the robbers. That robber, who police did confirm had a pistol, died at the scene. The second suspect fled on foot. They've detained a guy who they believe is a second subject. The suspect's agent had not been released. This is the reason I wanted to bring this one up. It kind of relates to the other one. It's always risky to draw a gun on somebody who's pointing a gun at you because it takes you a bit of time to get your gun out, and this never works if you don't practice. Because if you fumble your draw when the guy is pointing a gun at you, that gives him enough time to shoot you first. So, unless you're skilled, you will always surprise the guy because he doesn't expect you to draw a gun. You've got a little window there of a second or so before his little brain says, oh my God, he's drawing a gun. This is not deflecting the gun. The gun's still going to be pointed at you, so you got to beat him and hit something lethal where he's not going to fire back. And understanding that if you fire one round at a healthy suspect in front of you, odds are he's going to fire. He is not going to just fall over and have the little blood thing roll out of his mouth, even if you hit him in the leg. And television. People don't die instantly from gunfire, especially pistol fire, in most cases. So he's still going to go, and he may pull the trigger.
Well, and it also goes to your training. I see, you pick up any gun magazine, any publication, the internet, anything, there's a million different new concealment holsters, new way to conceal a gun, new way to hide a gun. Nobody will ever see it. But a lot of people I find don't train with that to get that weapon out of there in a hurry, under stress. And it goes back to that, I said earlier, training. If this may be I've got the proverbial wazoo box at home, and I call it a wazoo box because I saw this product and it looked very wazoo in the advertisement, and I went, man, I got to have this. And I got it, and I started working with it, and it turned out to be not as wazoo as I thought. So it goes in the wazoo box, never to be used again.
Garage sale.
Garage sale, yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's a garage sale. Or go, hey, I was looking at one of those here. I didn't like it, but you can try it. Have a good time. At the end of the day, though, it's training, guys. It's training. You've got to train with the weapon you're going to carry and where you're going to carry it. If you carry it in an ankle holster, you better be able to get it out of an ankle holster. If you carry it in a crotch holster, you better be able to get it out of a crotch holster and not shoot yourself in the crotch.
And almost looking at all these, and you're looking at almost any of these and saying, if the guy had an ankle holster, he'd be.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Stay away from those. Really cute on television, really hard to use in real life when you're in a fight. Or
boot holsters the same way, guys. It's cute to hide a gun. Oh, I got my gun in my boot. Get to it when you need it. Try to get that.
Looks nice.
Yeah, it looks great.
Remember the guy on TV used to carry his revolver in the small of his back?
Yeah.
Whatever, Mannix or whoever it was. Obviously, the guy never got in a fist fight and got knocked down on concrete.
Right. And you never had to sit in a car for very long on a surveillance, because pretty soon you go, oh, that thing hurts.
Reminder, we have a wedding chapel here. We do shotgun weddings, vow renewals, etc. If you go on our website, gunstorelasvegas.com, click special events, you'll find all sorts of things that you can do for vow renewals and weddings and things like that. We do weddings here about once every 2 weeks or so. They're really kind of entertaining. Alan, this is a story I put in just for you. I'm going to read it, and this is legalese. The Post and Courier reported in Charleston, South Carolina, a defendant who tried to have the murder charge against him thrown out under South Carolina's stand your ground law. The judge wouldn't, and he's now been acquitted after trial. Charleston County criminal jury acquitted the 31-year-old on Wednesday who had been charged with murder in the shooting death of a 29-year-old North Charleston person 2 years ago. His attorney had earlier tried to have the murder charge dismissed, saying his client was immune under the state's stand your ground law, same type of law we have here in Nevada. They don't require retreat. The judge rejected the request for immunity. The defendant testified at the trial he shot in self-defense when the other man tried to forcibly pull him out of his SUV. The prosecutor argued that both men were drug dealers and the shooting stemmed from an argument between them over a drug deal. So the judge would not dismiss the case as self-defense because the two guys were apparently arguing over a drug deal when one tried to get in his SUV and drive away, and the guy forcibly pulled him out. Basically, the judge was saying that there is no duty to retreat because they're arguing about drugs. There were no drugs apparently in this actual confrontation. But what they're saying is the bad guy can't claim self-defense because he has a history of drug sales.
Well, I think that the difference, I would disagree just slightly. It appears that this stand your ground law, which would create immunity for the shooter, right, in this case, the judge disallowed that, and it then went to trial, and he used the self-defense, which would be different, but cousins anyway, and that worked. And I'm sure that, like any trial in Nevada, the jury was given the legal rules, the instructions to consider at the time of their deliberations, and the self-defense law in Carolina served the defendant well. I think it sounds to me, without knowing all the details, and of course, as you know, the devil's in the details in a case like this, but it sounds like the judge probably based upon South Carolina law, made a sound decision to defer on
To
allowing
put
him
it in
to
front of the
use the stand your ground law, and instead put it in front of the jury and enabled his defense counsel to propound the self-defense to the jury. The jury was able to consider that, and they made a good decision, it sounds like. So I without knowing all the details, I agree with how it came out.
Yeah, this is why you need lawyers when you get involved in a shooting, even if it looks to you to be a perfectly valid shooting. And this guy believed it was a perfectly valid shooting.
As between two petty criminals, and I say petty criminals not to diminish the significance of drug
but that's correct.
offenses.
Neither one of these guys were like gigantic.
As between two petty criminals engaged in non-violent conduct, involved with the drug trade, simply by virtue of immersing yourself in that type of activity, you do not lose the right to defend yourself in the face of imminent bodily harm. That, I believe, is the law.
Yeah, it's just, criminals get themselves in trouble in criminal acts. The two guys go to rob a store and one guy shoots the clerk. The other guy is responsible because they're conspiring. These two guys are on the opposite side of the argument. They're not working together to commit a crime where somebody is shot. They're actually fighting with each other. And they weren't committing a robbery at the time they did this. There was no other victim there. So we lost that conspiracy part.
And one thing I'd like to bring up, while we're at it is, the no duty to retreat, the castle laws, they're not a defense to a lawful arrest. Okay, you cannot resist a law enforcement officer if you believe you're being unlawfully arrested. Where you work that out is in the court. You don't work that out in the street with the police officer. If he was wrong, if he was, he'll get, you'll prevail in the case. Two, you will end up, being able to file a complaint against him. And if he's wrong, the Internal Affairs Department or Division of the Police Department will take care of that. But you cannot use this law if a law enforcement officer says you're under arrest. Oh, the hell I'm not. The hell I am. And you pull a gun on him, you can't use that defense.
And we're getting a lot of that now with the riot situations where the group of people says, you can't take him to jail because he only threw a brick at you, and the officers choose to throw a brick at him. You cannot resist a lawful arrest.
Right.
And resist it in court. That's what
this is going to be one of the things that's going to be played out in the federal arrests of everybody involved in the incident in Bunkerville,
right?
And in the Oregon Refuge, you cannot use firearms to resist a lawful arrest. You have to, if you don't believe and the arrest may not be lawful, but unless he's trying to kill you for a parking ticket, you've got to fight that out in court. That's what the courts are for.
And in that case, nobody's lives were endangered at the Bundy Ranch by the officers pointing guns at them.
Right.
It was the other way around. So that case, there'd be a lot more indictments coming out, I understand, with that anyway. So hopefully.
So I just understood you to say something. I'm not sure if it was clear. Those at the Bundy Ranch who were engaged in civil disobedience, let's call it that, who had firearms trained upon them by the federal agents because they were engaged in civil disobedience. Where do you stand on aiming a firearm at a human being?
Well, when you've got my understanding, they push these BLM and U.S. Park Service SWAT team rangers. They were U.S. Park Police Rangers, or their SWAT team, and BLM Rangers. They put them down there in a situation where they were basically in a kill box. And when you've got guys who are up on and the minute I saw this on the TV.
Who was in the kill box?
The BLM Rangers. They had no cover except for a couple of vehicles.
So they were in the open.
They were in the open.
And what were those around them doing?
There were people on the overpass of the highway aiming rifles at them, and from a covered sniper position.
So aiming a firearm at another human being where there is no risk of imminent bodily harm is an inappropriate response, whether you're a federal agent or not. Would you agree?
Well, yes, and when you look at the federal agents, the only firearms that they were pointing at the protesters were 37 millimeter non-lethal gas guns loaded with 37 millimeter sponge rounds. They had lethal weapons with them.
And of course, firearm when it comes to something like that. But the person who's being aimed at wouldn't know what's it.
Well, and if you resist a law enforcement officer and say you're not going to do your job, at what point do you say, hey, I'm sworn by law to enforce it, and I'm in the process of doing that. You should not interfere with it.
I think the only position I would want to take is whether you are an agent of the federal government or not. Neither the agent nor the citizen who's protesting has a legal right or authority to aim a firearm at the other when there is no risk of harm presented. Would you agree with that?
When you have 400 people telling you you're not leaving that area with the cows, doing the performance of your duty.
So in the course of being yelled at, you need to respond with deadly force?
Well, we'll have another show.
I hope the feds are better trained than that.
Well, this is going to become this case is a much larger issue than we're talking about grazing fees and things because of exactly this argument. And there is something to be said for both sides. And the courts are going to have to sort it out where the line is drawn. And they may decide that, the Bundys felt intimidated because the guys were armed. And will that transfer into an officer making a traffic stop who's got a pistol in his belt? To a citizen being stopped who feels intimidated because the officer's got a gun. He's not pointed at him, but he has a gun, and he has it there to enforce the law. So this is going to be a lot bigger case than it appears. It's much larger than the Bundys and the cattle and everything else. There's a huge civil rights issue.
I agree with you entirely.
And the courts are going to be really interesting for that case as to what happens. This is, this. You'll like this one, guys. WKRN News 2, Nashville, Tennessee. Police say an attempted burglary suspect was shot in the arm by a resident late Friday morning. It happened just before 11 a.m. at the Waterford Crossings on Old Franklin Road. The resident heard repeating knocking at her door. She looked through the peephole and saw a man she did not know. She became concerned and hid in the closet in her bedroom with a .357 revolver and called police. While she was on the phone with 911, the intruder entered the apartment. A few minutes later, the victim came face to face with the intruder as he opened the closet door. She fired one shot in self-defense. The suspect turned and ran out of the apartment. The intruder, age 24, came to the Vanderbilt University Medical Center with a gunshot wound to his shoulder. The victim was able to identify him when shown a photo lineup. He was treated, released, and arrested, charged with aggravated burglary, bond set at $100,000. That's a little high for a burglary, but it seems he was free on bail from a felony theft charge the prior month. So he didn't, they said, well, this isn't working, obviously. Great case. She did exactly like any firearms instructor would tell her to do. She didn't recognize the guy, didn't want to open the door, so she went and hid in the closet with her gun and called the police. And unfortunately, the guy opened the door to the closet before the police got there. She saw it was not the police, fired her gun, hit him in the arm, didn't kill him. Nice, fine. She had a plan. This is what we always talk about. If somebody breaks in your house, everybody know what you're going to do. She had figured it out. There's a guy out there beating on the door. Don't answer the door. Go to the closet. Call 911. Sit there with the gun. She obviously thought that ahead of time. It isn't running panicking to here or there. Great. That's perfect. Have a plan. That's a good plan.
It's like we've said before, when if somebody's in your house, don't go try to clear your house. Barricade yourself in your bedroom if you know, and let them come to you.
Hopefully the good guys will get there
Because
first.
she was tactically trained to a certain extent, because he had to come through the fatal funnel of the closet door, which he nearly lost his life over. Should have been a little better shot.
You know, you just want to be there at the moment with a flash camera when he opens the door and sees the lady on the floor with the gun. You know,
Surprise!
just that split second. Oops.
When you least expect it, you're elected. It's your time of day. Smile.
Oh, yes.
Good advertisement for a safe room, huh?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
This story is here because of the way it was portrayed in the press, and for no other reason. The Metro News, the Voice of West Virginia, reported on the 18th in Clarksburg, a man shot early Friday morning was one of two brothers trying to break into a home just after 5 in the morning, according to the Clarksburg Police Department. The two local residents broke in through the back door of the home, according to police. A man and woman living in the home woke up, were assaulted by the suspects. The male homeowner told officers he shot one of the two intruders in the chest in self-defense. He was flown from the scene to Rubin Memorial Hospital, where his condition is unknown, and arrest warrants were issued for him and his brother. The Clarksville PD is investigating the incident. This seems like a very straightforward story. When this was run in the Metro News, the headline of the story said, "Victim of shooting allegedly broke into home." Yeah. At least a dozen people, by the time I read that, where you can comment, reminded Metro News, the editors, that the intruders breaking into the home are not the victims, they're the criminals. The guy who did the shooting was the victim. And the headline says, "Victim of shooting allegedly broke into home beforehand." No, we got the victim wrong. The victim was the homeowner who legally shot the person coming through.
And Alan, a legal term, allegedly, once you're in the house and shot, I don't think you allegedly broke in, did you? I think you're pretty confirmed
I think
that you're
that's
in there.
conclusively.
Yeah.
You look for the blood spatter and go, yeah, he was standing right here. I could tell that in grade 1 of the crime school. Questions or comments fired up with Bob at firedupmyl.com. And please friend us on Facebook. If you have a corporate event and want to try some machine gun shooting, go to our phone number and ask for Melissa, or email Melissa at thegunstorelasvegas.com, and she will get you set up. Oh, this is pretty good too. This is WREG in Memphis, Tennessee on the 18th, a couple days ago. Police in Memphis are investigating a double shooting. A man reported he was getting out of his car in the 3100 block of Ray Charles Drive when two individuals approached him with a gun and asked, "Where the money at?" The man said he always has his gun in his hand when he gets out of his car, so he pointed at them and fired. One suspect then fired back, hitting the motorist in the arm. Both robbers then turned and fled. When police arrived, they found the wounded motorist who were checking him when a report of another man came in, having been shot. When found him, they arrested him a block away. And the other suspect has not been caught. So no charges apparently being filed against the motorist. This is what we talked about earlier. When you are, a guy is pointing a gun at you and you fire. Now the motorist is stuck in his car. He really is in the doorway of the car. He has no place to run to or duck or whatever. But this is what happens when you fire at close range. The guy is very likely going to fire back. In this case, the guy did. And fortunately, the motorist wasn't seriously injured.
I think the motorist had every right to call out the assailant on his use of a preposition at the end of the sentence too, because it should have been "where the money at, a-hole," or something along those lines. You see what I mean?
Well, they may have dropped
That's
that.
totally inappropriate language on top of being a burglar or a robber or whatever he was.
Well, it may be the schools in Memphis, Tennessee.
That's just another
And
indictment of our system, isn't it?
And this goes back to that to that training thing that we've kind of thread through the whole thing. And I hate to keep harping on training, folks, but you know what? You can sit in a gun range and you can put holes and make a nice little pretty group in your target. But can you do it under stress? Can you do it from, this guy had his gun in his hand. He didn't even have to draw the weapon. Didn't have to present the weapon. So he already had it in his
hand. Got a
hand.
clean first shot, and the guy went, "Oh yeah, blam!" And
yeah, and I
back.
mean, you don't just shoot once on someone. And again, it's training. So get some.
And this is the problem with this. When we train police officers, we never ever say, shoot one round at the bad guy who's pointing a gun at you, and then wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
That's only on television. You shoot until he is not a threat to you. He's turned to run, he's falling down, he's dropped the gun, something, because people don't react as you expect on TV. If you shoot them, unless it's an immediate lethal shot to the spine or to the brainstem, he's going to shoot back in all likelihood.
This guy's lucky. He had two assailants, and you got to pick one.
And it's better to pick them both, but then that gives you more guys shooting back.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, concealed weapon permit classes every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at thegunstorelasvegas.com. We are there. There's a couple of stories I'm going to skip for the time being. I want to talk just for a minute about terrorism. Again, we have just had another humongous terrorist attack, this time in Brussels. It can happen again, and it will happen again, and it can happen here. I know, Lenny, you've kept up with more of the current news on this.
Yeah, I've been kind of glued to the TV today and on the phone with some sources, and obviously 4 days ago they arrested pretty much the mastermind for the Paris attacks. And I think what this was an attack that was already in the pipeline, and they realized, hey, this guy, he could be going to give this whole thing up, so they accelerated it up. From what I understand and what I gather from my sources, the sophistication of this wasn't just let's throw a pipe bomb together. This was well planned. These were well built. I understand just before I came down to the studio, I understand that they have found the bomb making factory, and they found chemicals and the makings. It was scary. I saw the Belgian police have released a picture of 3 suspects, and one of the things that I know what they did. I can't really go into it, but you will see the 2 of the guys. They're pushing the carts. They put their bags on the carts. They've since interviewed the taxi driver that brought them to the airport. He said they were very guarded about their bags. Their bags were very heavy. They got a cart. They put them on the cart. 2 of the guys have a glove only on their left hand. And that usually is either a dead man switch in case they were to be shot and couldn't pull it. And it's just one of those things that we meaning law enforcement and everybody really needs to be able to go, why are these 2 guys wearing a glove, just a single glove on their left hand?
So that they're putting the detonator in there. You normally see them holding the button. It's built into the glove.
Yeah, and I think what they did was, I can't go into it too much, but had they released that, at some point they released that cart, and when they did, it was plugged into the bomb. The bomb was in the baggage in the cart. It's killed 34 last count. Over 230 were injured. There were 2 blasts in the Brussels airport. They were done not past security, folks. This was done in the ticket counter line. You come in off the airport and you get out of the car and you walk in the terminal and you're standing in those sometimes tremendous lines. And they picked 2 lanes that had the most people in and around them when they detonated those bombs. So they picked what we've said before, a soft target. It was an airport. Everybody goes, well, airports are secure. Yes, past security.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting. There's been a report released that was a intel report. I don't know if it came from the French or the Belgians, that they feel or have developed enough credible information to believe that there are approximately 90 of these same cohorts still running loose in Europe. And so I think this is just going to be the start of a wave of attacks. People, and I won't mention his name, but people have said that certain political candidates were nuts because they didn't want to let in the Syrian refugees. Again, this is my only personal opinion, but these guys this is what happens when you have unregulated illegal immigration, or you have unvetted legal immigration, where you let these people in, oh, he's fine, the documents look good, you can come on in. This is what Europe is going to deal with for decades.
We're in a war.
Yeah.
Until our government realizes we're in a war, we're getting lip service to it. So,
How many support persons are behind every every bomber, so to speak? The bombers usually end up dead. So how many people behind the scenes does it take to keep them or put them in the place where they can do their damage?
Not that many, surprisingly. Pretty classic terror cells, 6, maybe 8 people, sometimes less, sometimes more, but they're very smart. The bad thing is right now is the communications, encryption with the black space and the internet, and we have absolutely got to start working on that, because they are being able to communicate with impunity.
This area is swarming with all sorts of investigations and officers, and yet this complicated plot. I agree, it was planned before 3 days ago, but they had no detection of it either, apparently.
Well, and you got to understand the situation in Brussels, where the leader of the Paris attacks was arrested in Brussels, was 5 blocks from where he grew up. Yeah. And everybody was looking at him all over Europe and into the Soviet Union, and, the former Soviet Union, and into clear to Syria, and he was hiding 5 blocks from where he grew up, which means that there are people, and I'm not going to get into because many of you know what I've done for a living. I've got a lot of friends that are very good, devout Muslims. I would not say that this is an anti-Muslim. This is say something about your bad guy neighbor. And unless you say something about him, and I can't believe that this guy was hidden 5 blocks from where he grew up, and somebody who wasn't a committed terrorist probably saw him. I know how they got to him, but I can't reveal that. But I know full well that someone saw this guy prior to this. So somebody's got to say something. And it's the same thing here. We say all the time, if you see something, say something. If it looks weird and it looks out of place, say something to somebody in authority. Let the law enforcement go check it out. If it turns out to be somebody just who likes to wear a glove on their left hand, fine. Okay? I'm not saying that we should shoot everybody that only wears a glove on their left hand. But if it looks out of place, say something. And that's the only way we're going to ever defeat these guys. This is not World War II, where we have
lines and
uniforms, and you pretty much know every bad guy. We're fighting an enemy that lives in the shadows.
kind of related, there was a story in yesterday's papers about Norway has taken their 6,000 uniformed police officers and disarmed them. They announced plans in November, and it was extended following the Paris attacks. Now they've decided there are no longer grounds for their officers all being armed. And Norway now, like Britain, Iceland, Ireland, and New Zealand, will follow a no firearms policy, and only officers, police officers, be equipped with guns under specialized circumstances, and so forth. It goes on about Norway and so forth. I would suspect this decision was overturned yesterday.
Well, you know, I don't know,
What do you
Bob, because you got to remember Norway is the scene of the worst single active shooter terrorism case in history.
The Nazi guy.
The Nazi, you know, and who was just in the news not too long ago.
Yeah, he's being mistreated.
Mistreated because he's not being able to talk to his Nazi followers. The reality of it is, I'm shocked that Norway would do this, because the only way you stop an active shooter is a good guy with a gun as fast as possible. And if you are taking your 6,000 police officers and taking their guns away from them, you are just leaving yourself wide open.
Yeah, it was kind of a put on a happy face decision by their tourism department, I suspect, but hopefully that's changed, or they're going to suddenly find a bunch of dead American tourists. I'm afraid that, because that becomes the ultimate soft target if the cops enter and have to run back to the station to get their guns or their car.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Well, look at what happened after, you know, Paris, you know, they lifted everything because of in the wake of the Paris attacks. Belgium has had kind of the same constraints. They can't serve search warrants after 5 o'clock in the afternoon before 8 o'clock in the morning. So there's no nighttime search warrant. So everything's done during the day. I got a feeling that's going to be replaced.
I gotta do some closing stuff here because we're running up on our time. Upcoming events, we've got the Las Vegas Gun Show at the Sports Center up the road from us here on Sunset, April 16 and 17. The Nevada Firearms Coalition Banquet is coming up at the Gold Coast, nvfac.org. You can get into that, get some tickets for it. We're going to be back next week with attorney Clark Patrick and firearm instructor Mike Rogers. Again, if you have a question or comment, you can send me an email at bob@firedupmail.com, and we will respond to that. National Shooting Sports also report this week a group of 33 dependably anti-gun Democrats in the House of Representatives have introduced a bill, H.R. 4748, the import assault weapons ban of 2016, introduced by a California Democrat, Jackie Spire. It bans importation of any semi-automatic firearm that can accept a detachable magazine that might hold more than 10 rounds. It's going to have to wait till there are a few more Democrats in Congress to get voted on, or maybe till Hillary's president. Look out. I could do a whole show on these bills that are being put in, particularly in California. The national bills are really scary. You got to vote, or you're very likely to lose your guns after this next election, folks. It is really scary. And how do you fight a terrorist when you're not allowed to have a gun?
That's right.
I appreciate you watching Fired Up. Lenny, thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Mr. Utel, nice to see you again. And,
Thank you, our engineer, for being there for us.
Next time I have these two gentlemen on, I will be sure that we will allow time for the Bundy case and to see where it's gone. That's a really tough case. It's where the rubber hits the road.
Will you hand me that piano, please?
Are we all set there, Mr. Engineer? Hello, sir. Okay.
Wow.
What was that?
That was a meteor, I believe.
That was a less than lethal. Wow.
That's dedication.
Why, yes, it is. You just work them too hard, Bob.
Apparently I do.
You know, the concentration that's required to sit there and ignore three of us, the Three Stooges, is remarkable.
Allow me to check and make sure there's not a medical emergency going on.
Well, I can see the
Okay, there we go.
Been a long week. It's 1 minute after 5. We presume we're off the air. Okay.